Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is a lap guide for the new lap time challenge taking place at Sardegna B with the 2003 BMW Z4. To access this lap time challenge, go over to sport mode, so make sure you have menu book number 9 completed. Click on online time trials, which is towards the middle of the screen, and you'll see the current lap time challenges being held. So this specific lap time challenge goes on until the end of March 12th, 2025. We're using a stock BMW Z4 and we're on the comfort soft tires. So no, you cannot tune your car. Your goal is to get within the 3% time range of the world record time when the event ends, as that is when your lap time gets counted, and hopefully you'll be able to get to 2 million credits. I do have my in-game replay in the description down below if you want to check that out, but other than that, let's go ahead and get started with the lap guide. So we'll take it from the very top because we already have to deal with a pretty tricky final chicane, so we'll go from there. So I like to shift up to 4th gear before I start my lap, then brake when the wall on the right is just about to end. That way I can go down to 3rd gear and get the car to rotate a bit more. So full braking power, go down to 3rd gear and turn in just as the curb on the left starts. So you can see right here, I'm starting to ease off of the brakes. Try to get as close as you can to the apex and gradually get back on the throttle. And with this car, you want to shift up just after the shift bar starts to blink, so you don't want to rev it out way too much. Now eventually you're going to make your way towards the right side of the track, and your first braking point is before the 100 meter board. I like to use this red wall on the right as my cue to brake. There's also a couple other braking points that you can also use. So use all of your braking power, go down to 3rd gear, and one thing that I personally do, once I reach the 50 meter board, I start to turn in just a little bit, but I don't turn in all the way until the curb or the blue curb on the right is just about to end. So start to turn in all the way, ease off of the brakes as you're turning in, so doing a bit of trail braking. And as you hit the apex, you want to be really smooth getting back on the throttle so the car stays on its best behavior. And if you do it just right, you'll make use of the entire width of the track without dipping onto the gravel. Now turning towards the right, you can't take this flat out. Then you want to turn in before you reach the red wall that is on the right. You're aiming for the start of the curb on the left, which you can use as your apex. So the start of the curb right here, and what you can do is shift up to 4th gear when you're right around this point. That way the car will turn in just a little bit more, and if you do it just right, you'll be able to hit the start of the curb and go through this part flat out and not even dip onto the grass on the right. Now make your way towards the right side of the track, brake before you reach the red wall that is on the right, and you'll use all of your braking power and make your way down to 3rd gear. For this turn, you definitely do not want to go down to 2nd gear, just go down to 3rd gear. You can use the start of the curb on the left or before the curb on the right ends as your cue to turn in, and start to ease off of the brakes, and be aware that the car will start to slide around a little bit as you ease off of the brakes, and you can use that to try to get the car to rotate around this turn. And as you hit the apex, just be nice and careful getting back on the throttle, because especially for a turn like this one, it's a bit easy for the car to want to step out. So you want to start to unwind your steering and smoothly get back on the throttle. Then go towards the left, and before you reach the start of the wall on the left, that's where you start to turn in, but you don't start to brake until just after that wall on the left starts. So you can see right here, this is what I'm starting to brake, and I'm going to use a little under 50% of my braking power. And if done just right, you'll get the car to engage in a cute little slide, and you can use that to help the car rotate a bit better. And as your car is starting to point towards this hilly part of the trees on the other side of the track, that's where you can start to smoothly get back on the throttle And if you do it just right, you'll be able to make use of the entire width of the track without dipping onto the gravel on the left. These two kinks are easily taken flat out. Notice that I am on 4th gear now. Then go towards the left, and you're going to brake before the 100 meter board, before the gravel on the left starts. Use all of your braking power, make your way down to 3rd gear, and you can move a bit towards the left to use the red and white curves as you're still within track limits. Turn in just before the curb on the left ends, and you want to be really careful when you get to the apex, because this part right here where the apex is at is really bumpy. There's a pretty noticeable elevation change, so you want to be nice and careful getting back on the throttle, because if you're a little too aggressive, the car will step out and it can be a bit difficult to catch the car. It actually happens right here where the car steps out just a little bit, but I was able to catch it. Make sure your wheels, your right wheels, go onto the red and white curb. That's part of track limits. If they get onto the blue part, your lap time gets invalidated. And notice that I stayed on 3rd gear because it is faster to exit that hairpin on 3rd gear. Now, just as the wall on the right is about to start, that is where you start to turn in and use a little under 50% braking power. You can be a bit aggressive with this turn, but if you do dip onto the grass on the left, you want to be a bit careful with your throttle input to make sure that the car stays on its best behavior. Then bring yourself towards the right. Use the end of the curb on the right as your cue to turn in. If you do it just right, you can get away with shifting up to 4th gear mid-turn and not have to lift off our throttle. So I'm starting to turn in. I shifted to 4th gear right on right here. Some people shift up a little bit earlier than where I do it. And if you do it just right, you'll be able to go through this turn without lifting off our throttle. If you touch the curb on the left, the car will step out a bit, so get ready to catch it if you do touch that curb. Stay towards the right and use the end of the wall on the right as your final braking point. So unlike when we started the session, we're going a bit faster, so you need to use all of your braking power. And when you shift down to 3rd gear, the car may step out a bit more, so you do need to be careful about that. And I use the start of the curb on the left as my cue to turn in, so I start to ease off the brakes, go down to 3rd gear, the car will rotate a bit more, and be careful if you dip onto the grass on the left, because these curves can really unsettle the car. So I don't go out full throttle until my left wheels are back on the track, and I'll even wait just a very brief moment before I can get back on full throttle power. It's a really tricky turn. If you do decide to cut that left part of the chicane, you have to be a bit more careful with your throttle input. So we'll go through this again, but this time I'm not going to stop the video. So we'll start in chase cam, take it from the very top, and just to show you how I go through the final chicane as I'm getting ready to start the lap. So I look for the end of the wall on the right. That's my cue to get on the brakes. Down to 3rd gear, the car will rotate a bit more. Nice and careful getting back on the throttle. Shifting up when the shift bar starts to blink. You don't want to rev this car too much, and you also don't want to shift too much because this car has a really slow shifting time. It takes about 2,000 years before you go up a gear. But anyways, brake before the 100 meter board, go down to 3rd gear. Nice and easy off the brakes, slowly getting back on the throttle. You want to be really smooth getting back on the throttle with the Z4. You can go up to 4th gear to help the car rotate a bit better without having to lift off a throttle. Use the red wall on the right as a cue to get on the brakes. Down to 3rd gear, ease off the brakes. The car will slide a bit, but it is possible to use that to help the car rotate a bit better. Use the red white wall on the left to turn in and get on the brakes. Around 50% braking power. Stay on 3rd gear and then go ahead and shift up to 4th gear. These two kinks can easily be taken flat out. Stay towards the left. Brake before the 100 meter board that is on the right. Down to 3rd gear. Stay on 3rd gear. Nice and careful getting back on the throttle, as here it's really easy for the car to get unsettled, as you saw right there. It is faster to just stay on third gear compared to going on to second gear. Nice and careful getting on the throttle for this turn. Shift up to fourth gear. As you enter this turn, it is possible to get away with not having to lift off the throttle. Use the end of the wall on the right to get back on the brakes, down to third gear. Nice and careful getting back on the throttle, especially if you cut the first part of the chicane, and go ahead and finish your lap. And we'll go through this one more time, but this time we will be in bumper cam. So we'll go ahead and switch over to that in just a moment. There we go. And taking it from the very top again, because I want to show how I start this lap. So again, look for the end of the wall on the right, as that is the cue that I use to get on the brakes, down to third gear. That will help the car rotate a bit more. Then carefully get back on the throttle. Shift up just after the shift bar on the bottom of the screen starts to blink, and you want to be careful about shifting up too many times, because this car takes about 10,000 years to go up a gear. But anyways, brake before the 100 meter board, down to third gear. Nice and careful getting off the brakes, and carefully get back on the throttle. For this long left turn, it is possible to go up to fourth gear and use that brief moment to help the car rotate around the turn a bit better. Use the red wall on the left to get on the brakes, down to third gear. The car will slide a little bit, but you can use that to help the car rotate around this turn a bit better. Use the wall on the left to turn in, and use a little under 50% braking power. Stay on third gear. Nice and careful getting back on the throttle. If you do it just right, you will not even touch the gravel on the left. Go up to fourth gear. These two kinks can easily be taken flat out, but stay towards the left. Brake before the gravel on the left starts, before the 100 meter board, down to third gear. Be especially careful getting back on the throttle, because the car can step out over here. You even see it happen right there. Use the wall on the right to get on the brakes and turn in. Nice and careful getting back on the throttle. Stay on third gear. Shift up to fourth gear as you enter this long left turn. Brake before you reach the end of the wall on the right, down to third gear. And you want to be really careful getting back on the throttle, especially if you cut the first part of the chicane. And after all that, I was able to poke into the 137s, getting a 137.905. Getting into the 137s is super tricky. It took me a while. It took me a good chunk of Saturday to be able to make that happen, but I'm pretty happy that I was able to make it happen. Hopefully this lap guide helps you out, and if you liked the video, if you found the video useful or helpful or whatever, you can press the like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. But that is all for me. This is Mr. MCA. Take care, be nice to each other, and I'll see you in the next video.